All right, we're going to start talking about surface area and what that means. We've been spending a lot of time talking about finding areas of two-dimensional shapes. So now we're getting into three-dimensional things, meaning things that have more than two dimensions. So we're going to kind of just take this box, for instance. If I'm looking at this box, it's 3D because it points out at you. It kind of jumps out at you. And when we're talking about surface area, we're talking about the area of all of the surfaces put together. So when you look at a three-dimensional box, which we like to call a rectangular prism, it's named rectangular because the base of it is going to be a rectangle. So if I'm looking at this rectangular prism, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces. So 6 different areas that I need to find, and I need to add them together. So now what's nice with a rectangular prism is 2 of the sides are always the exact same size. So really you're only looking for 3 different areas, and then you have to double each of them. When you unfold a rectangular prism or unfold a prism in general, you end up with something that we like to call a net. And a net just means if I were to fold that up, that's what it's going to look like. So a net is a two-dimensional version of the three-dimensional figure. Now, you can have other shapes that are prisms as well. For instance, if I have a triangular prism, it looks something like this, where we've got a triangle, and we're going to have another triangle behind it, or on top of it, depending, and you can connect those. That's a triangular prism. When you see 2 of the exact same shape, those are your bases. So in this case, even though there's a rectangle on the bottom, your triangles are your bases because that's the shape that showed up twice, and there are 2 of them. So if we're looking at finding the surface area, we're going to first focus on finding the surface area of the net. Right now, this is a three-dimensional shape, so we need to make sure we draw the net. All nets for rectangular prisms are going to look something like this, where you can draw one big rectangle, and you would end up with 4 of them throughout the middle. And then you always have 1 on top and 1 on bottom. So most nets are going to look like this. The hard part is figuring out how you're going to label it. So if I kind of take this rectangle and I turned it, I would say that would be kind of what it would look like. So we're going to label these long edges as what the longest side was. So if I look at my shape up here, my longest side was 10. So I'm going to say all of these are 10 meters long. So we're going to go through and label each of those. All right. So now if I'm focusing on this rectangular prism, and I'm focusing on the bottom here, if the length is 10 for one of these, the width is going to be 2. So if I were to go through that, I'd maybe start with this being my base. This is my bottom one. Usually you want your bottom rectangle to be the one that has the 2 bases connected to it. So we've got the bottom, and we've got, this is 2 meters. So now, as you look at this, if I were to fold these 2 sides up, meaning if I'm looking at this for now, so this is my rectangle, I've got these are 10, this along the bottom, so this part here is my 2, if I look at the side here, this width here, so the one that I have right here, is not 2. So if you try to picture folding this up and taking this and folding it together, if you look at this side, which represents these two here, this is 2 meters, this is going to be 2 meters. And then we can go straight across. This is 2 meters, and this one's 2 meters. But the side here is going to be this length here. So this is going to be 3 meters, and then straight across will be 3 meters, 3 meters, and 3 meters. If you try to picture folding the box up, these two should match, because if you fold this up like that and this one up like this, those two sides need to match. So this one's going to be 3 meters, which means this one's 3 meters. We've got 3 meters here and 3 meters here. Inside, along this, we're going to alternate. So if this is 3, 2, 3, this one's going to have to be 2. And that is the one that's going to match up on top of this one when we fold it up. So now finally, we just have to find the surface area. So if you look here, we have 6 different rectangles, and we've already talked about finding the area of a rectangle. Just a reminder, area of a rectangle is your base times your height. So if I look, I've got a base of 2 and a height of 10. So 2 times 10 is 20. 3 is my base, 10 is my height. 3 times 10 is 30. I've got 2 times 10 is 20. 3 times 10 is 30. And then we've got 2 times 3, which is 6. And then 2 times 3, which is 6. To find my surface area, I'm going to add all those together. So we've got 20 plus 30 plus 20 plus 30 plus 6 plus 6, which is going to end up being 20 plus 30 is 50, plus 20 is 70, plus 30 is 100, plus 6 is 106, plus 6 is 112. All area is squared, so we've got 112 meters squared. That would be my surface area of that rectangular prism. Now we're going to jump over to the formula side. Now there's a formula that you can kind of work through for surface area, and it's a lot shorter. The steps aren't as long. However, it is a little trickier. So if we're looking at this formula here for surface area, and we've got a rectangular prism down here, again, keep in mind, if you have a triangular prism, so something that looks like this, where you've got a triangle and you've got another triangle right across from it, the triangles are your bases. And if we're going to work with this formula over here, and you need to find the area of the base, area of a triangle is 1/2 the base times the height. So just kind of keep that in mind and remember it, because you might need to use that. But we're not using that currently. We're going to be working through rectangular prisms. So my formula is going to be 2 times B plus P times H. B stands for the area of the base. And what we're going to really focus on is shading in the base that we're going to use, because it's going to be helpful to use that. P is perimeter of the base. Notice both of these were only focusing on the base of the shape. And then h is the height of the prism, meaning if your base is on the bottom, your second base is on top, so your height's the distance in between them. If you're dealing with a triangular prism, your height is going to be the distance between the two triangles. If we're looking at this example here, one thing I really like to do is shade in the base. Rectangular prisms, it's going to be easier to shade in just the bottom, use the bottom for it. So we're going to shade in this bottom rectangle here and really focus in on that. So we're going to figure out what capital B is, which is the area of the base, what P is, which is the perimeter of the base, and what H is, which is the height. Height's the easiest. So if I know this is my base on the bottom here, I'm looking for the height, which is the distance from the bottom to the top. If you look over here, 4 is that distance. So my height is 4. Perimeter, remember, is just adding up all the sides to your shape that you're looking for, the perimeter. So I've got a 6 plus 5, which is 11, but I can't forget about the other two sides. So the side opposite of 6 is also 6, and the opposite of 5 is also 5. So we're taking 6 plus 5, which is 11, plus 6, which is 17, plus 5, which is 22. So my perimeter is 22. And the area of the base is a rectangle. So we've got base times height. So 6 times 5, which is 30. We have all the information we need. So now we just have to plug it into our formula. So we've got surface area equals 2 times B plus perimeter, which is 22, times H, which is 4. Now we're going to go through and do our order of operations. So do our multiplication first. 2 times 30 is 60. 22 times 4 is 88. And now when I take 60 plus 88, I should end up with 148. We remember area is always squared units, so we add inches. We're going to plop a 2 on there. So my surface area is going to be 148 inches squared. That is surface area. Again, you can do the nets every time if that's easier. Otherwise, you can use the formula.